One of the things we learned as we went along with Angus Sinclair is that it's wrong to think that these criminals are only sexual predators or are only a certain category of criminals. What we found with Angus Sinclair was he offended across a wide range of criminality, everything from housebreaking to assault and robbery to pornography. He was also a first-class painter and decorator, and at the weekends he went out and abducted and murdered young women, right? And he carried out all this activity in discrete boxes, as it were, none of the twain shall meet, none of which overflowed into the next. He was a highly organised killer. And I've said it before, I'll say it again, I know it's controversial, but I think Angus Sinclair is probably the most dangerous man to walk the face of Scotland in the 20th century. And he had plenty of good company in that regard. But when you think about it, Angus Sinclair was only at liberty for 12 years of his adult life. And yet he killed all these women. And don't forget, he raped and sexually assaulted a dozen children, at least, into the bargain, because he was caught for that too. So when you look at the concentration of his offending, over 12 years, just 12 years, you see someone that is just a predator, an apex predator who is capable of the most dreadful crimes. And I think he was the most dangerous man there was. And to look at him when we saw him, that's the thing, Norman, to look at him. I mean, you look more like a serial killer than he does. And I'm not saying you look like a serial killer. I'm just saying you look more like a serial killer than he does. Because he was a little grey, innocuous man that you wouldn't have looked twice at in the street.
Until intents purposes, he was a law-abiding citizen. He worked as a painter and decorator. We know that. His wife was a nurse. He lived in quite a nice house in Glasgow. There'd be nobody would suspect him. It's not somebody you would suspect. If the police are appealing for information on a murder or whatever, you wouldn't look at your neighbour and think Angus Sinclair's the man, isn't it? He would just be so anonymous. That's
right. The other thing was that, you see, his first victim was when he was 15 years old, Catherine Rehill, in a highly organised, sexually motivated killing. But then when he came out of prison, he got himself involved in other kinds of criminality, armed robbery being one of them. So I think it's understandable that the police, they would know Angus Sinclair, but they would see him as an armed robber. And this is one of the mistakes we used to make. I think we're better at it now. Is you tend to see people in certain categories, and you forget that actually people can range across a number of categories, and that's what Angus Sinclair did.
I'm going to ask you that you've kind of answered the question in many ways, but where do you think Sinclair stands in the kind of pantheon of serial killers? Is he as bad as you can get? I was thinking of people like Ian Brady, Moore's murderer, Peter Sutcliffe, Yorkshire Ripper, Dennis Nielsen, of course, another Scot, and you mentioned Peter Tobin. Is he perhaps, I don't know if you can't have a league table, but would he be as bad, if not worse, than these individuals?
Well, I mean, it depends how you define it. First of all, I've spent the last 10 minutes talking about Angus Sinclair, but actually I don't like to talk about these people, and I certainly don't like to glorify them. And I think too much of that has been done, to be honest. We talk too much, and you see television programs on about the worst serial killers and all the rest of it. I have met too many of these people, and I don't like to glorify them in any way. Okay, but your question. So Peter Sutcliffe killed 13 women. So in terms of numbers, he's way up there. Ian Brady, horrendous murders with Myra Hindley, abduction, torture, terrible torture of young people. They come into a category of their own. I don't know. I mean, it's not something I want to think about too much, to be honest with you. But again, I say, when you consider that Sinclair was only at liberty for 12 years of his adult life, and the damage that he did is quite extraordinary. It's disgraceful, utterly disgraceful.